Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to Minigame Podcast. I guess I should call it the Minigame Podcast. We'll have a bit of a warm-up section, and then we'll jump into the video game news. Today is Friday, January 31st. Yep. So, I suppose the big news today is, first of all, that I've got other stuff going on. I may get a phone call. And I've got kind of a hard out today, so we're not going to go super long. I've been talking about for the past couple streams that I was going to go to a video game meetup, and so I'm going to end up talking about that a lot. With that, though, one thing that did occur to me is I probably need to explain everything as if it is a new viewer, so I'm going to be scrolling down SteamDB's 24-hour concurrent charts here while I talk, showing off what games in the past 24 hours have been played. It's really this column here. This is the overall column. I also probably should think about bringing back the header column, because I guess that is also necessary for the viewer, even if it annoys me personally. So the video game meetup went as perfectly as I think it possibly could go. It was a really good experience. I'm going to start all of this, and then I'm going to put the caveat that I am a critic, and that is just a part of my nature. So I am going to now spout off things that weren't perfect, but honestly, I think it was as perfect as can go. And I want to start off by saying it was just a breath of fresh air after many years of not getting any of that, as far as talking with people as much as I could, and dealing with people who were either on their good, pleasant behavior, or just amenable people who actually did want to talk and communicate with each other. Some of the worst parts of the meetup, I will say, were really the venue itself. I went to this craft beer bar that seemed like they had no real cocktails at all. So it's kind of a beer and wine bar. They didn't have a soda gun, so to get Sprite, they sold me 2 cans of Sprite for $2.50 each. Just a huge markup. Soda out of a soda gun. It's gonna cost them a nickel, even if they were gonna mark it up to $1.50. $2.50 is ridiculous. On which I asked for a glass, and they handed me a glass and pointed to a kitchen appliance desktop ice machine and said you can get ice there. So I'm assuming they also don't have an ice machine. So it's just like a really understaffed bar, despite the fact that the bar is huge. It's like ridiculously long bar, that if you were actually sitting at the bar, which it wasn't, it was really more of a checkout counter, you would be seating probably 30 people. Just ridiculous amounts. They had wood fire pizza, which was a little burnt, and yeah, that was $17 for a 12-inch pizza, thin crust. Just a huge markup. A lot of this is certainly the area in which the bar is, and that it was basically in a downtown nightlife region, so things do tend to be expensive in that region, in any city anyways. But yeah, I definitely can't say a lot is great with the bar. The bar was blaring music way too loud, and I know I'm a little deaf from playing video games too loud, but I don't think anybody in that place really could hear anybody else talking at all. So for the idea of having a meetup there, that really didn't work. And the bar had double booked a meetup. So on one corner of the bar, which is this giant kind of factory building, open area building with really no soundproof echo isolation or anything, so just really echoey. On one end they had one meetup, on the other they had the meetup that I was going to for video gamers. So yeah, the bar is huge, and it has like bench seat yourself tables, so there was a massive amount of people between those two meetups, and just I think random people on a Thursday night being there. And so I think fire marshal code probably was approaching the maximum there as far as just how many people you really would want in there. It felt easily like there was 100 people, 150 people even, in that one building, just all kind of talking over each other and echoey. The bar seemed to be dog friendly in the sense that there was at least 2 or 3 people with dogs that they were just bringing it in, and nobody was complaining about that. But in reality, it's not equipped to be dog friendly as far as health code violations and things like that, but also just not equipped really in the sense that there wasn't like water bowls out for dogs to use. There wasn't any kind of artificial grass or anything if the dogs were going to immediately relieve themselves. Now they could, if the dogs were trained, signal to their owners that I guess you don't call them masters these days. That's probably something that they are discouraging, is calling dog owners masters. They're probably discouraged even using the phrase dog owners instead of maybe dog parents or dog friends, companions. Companion sounds like a wrong phrase. I don't know what PC culture really would want dog and their owners to be called. I imagine there's probably not a huge amount of agreement. But yep, they didn't have, as far as I could tell, skimming over the menu, any kind of pup cups. And yeah, you don't give alcohol to dogs. So there is always that chance that like you'll poison and possibly kill a dog if you give them alcohol. Some people do, but you really have to know that your dog, the size of your dog, you're going to do that, and it's highly discouraged. I don't think it's really ever safe. So yeah, it's not crazy to have pep cups, which are usually just like maybe a little bit of peanut butter or whipped cream, things like that. They didn't seem to really have treats either. So yeah, while they may claim to be dog friendly, that they're not really going that full mile there. And yeah, I'd wonder what the health code regulations really say about an eating establishment that serves alcohol being allowing wild animals there at the same time. Not that I hate the idea of dogs being there, but it's just certain. I like sanitary food delivery and service over seeing a dog every now and then. It kind of feels like the best solution would be to say be outside, and the bar did have a significant outside section there, so like benches outside and such. So yeah, but yeah, to be in the building, just kind of wondering. Now, I did run into one person that was very aggressively training a 7-month dog who is not part of the video game group. And yeah, I was sitting there eating the pizza, and I sat across from him and saw the dog, and this guy was like going repetitiously on just like training him and sitting and telling him to sit over and over again. It was just an interesting insight to something I imagine is the case, is that there's probably a decent number of people who own pets that use it as a method of being controlling, that's just their personality overall, and so they're raising a very different pet than what I would do, which would be more laid back and free range, to the other end of the extreme, where I would raise a pet that's just not very obedient at all. And I imagine in the history of humans having dogs, that is probably how most people raised dogs, is just lots of training and lots of focus on them following commands every time consistently. But yeah, it was kind of strange. He sat there for, I am pretty sure, at least 2 or 3 hours, and this dog is just hyper excited with all the people around and other dogs, and he's just telling him to sit and wait and not go up to people, and every single person walking by meanwhile is petting the dog and just being friendly to it. And so yeah, those are really I wouldn't say it was really abusive or anything. It's just a lot of training, just a lot of demanding focus for a 7-month, particularly on that breed, particularly from what that personality seemed to be of that dog, because you know, dogs have a tendency to affect the personality. Breeds have a tendency to affect the personality of dogs, but then dogs still are going to have different personalities within even the same breeds. But yeah, that's mostly the negative parts of the meetup. And so when I'm not even talking about the actual video game meetup to complain, I mean, you've basically got a perfect situation. Now, the content creators that was running the meetup, I kind of feel sorry for them, in that regardless of how well it's run, they're basically there to work. So they can say hi a little bit to people, but they can't really get into deep conversations. I probably monopolized one of their time a little bit too much talking to them, or several of them's their time talking to them. But yeah, they really don't get to enjoy the meetups as much as this is them working. This is them in part promoting themselves, but mostly promoting the meetups themselves, which there is perhaps an argument there that rotating hosts might make some sense too, but then that's a whole coordination issue if there was going to be a different group of people running a different meetup. One of the complaints that is not really a complaint is that it is like this bi-monthly meetup. So the next meetup potentially is not even going to happen for 2 months. Plus, I will put this down to personal differences or opinions. They kind of want meetups around games in general, and me personally, I'm not as hyped or excited on like a board game night or a Magic the Gathering night or a Dungeons and Dragons night, and I just don't know if there really is that much of a overlap, and particularly when you're talking like Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons, there, I think, is a real potential there, where if you are letting in just random people, you're gonna get some real on the spectrum type nerds and jerks. So if I was gonna do a Magic the Gathering night or Dungeons and Dragons night, that almost has to be a private meetup in my mind. It's like, this is going to be groups that we're going to personally invite to do this. And yeah, me personally, I would not pick a bar as the first place to have a meetup if the idea of the meetup is for people to really to talk and meet. Honestly, I got to talk to maybe 4 or 5 people out of probably 30 plus people, and I kind of almost wish it was like a speed dating thing. This was the first meetup they had done in a while, but I kind of feel like maybe people at the beginning doing a whole introduction setup and just going around the room and saying, hey everybody, asking them some maybe basic questions, and some of that awkward stuff that you have on like at jobs and things might very well do well, as far as just, hey, let's ask some basic questions, give everybody a chance to promote their YouTube or Twitch, which I did meet another couple of people that had YouTube and Twitch channels, on top of the content creators that were actually running the meetup. And I suspect maybe 2/3 of the people, if not more, there as adults all have channels, because it has almost become just like the default these days, is that people want to be content creators. And that's not wrong attitude, really. Like, what was wrong is that before the internet, people like me were sitting alone in a room playing video games for potentially hours and hours on end. At least with the YouTube and Twitch, you're making some kind of record of it and creating a parasocial relationship instead of a completely antisocial relationship of playing alone in a room. There is some validity to just enjoying things on your own every now and then, but society as a whole probably needs those kinds of relationships to develop, or try to develop. Not that YouTube and Twitch are good at doing that. So yeah, but with the noise and all, very little communication and meeting of people. It was also a Mario Kart tournament first and foremost, so I played some Mario Kart 8. I've never played Mario Kart 8 before. It does seem to me like there's not been a huge amount of progress since Mario 64, really, in the Mario Kart series, which is probably true because it's probably just been perfected as a concept. But definitely with some new stuff, and the controls just didn't feel as tight as I remember Mario 64 to control vehicles, and some of the gimmicks. I never really figured it out, which was a recurring theme, because they also had Smash Bros. Brawl, and I hadn't played that either, so just figuring out the controls as far as what do these buttons do. Now, they had a great setup. They had invested quite a lot on having 4 Nintendo Switches with Mario Kart, and eventually they put Smash Bros. On one monitor. And then they had a 4-connector controller to GameCube controllers for everybody. So, like, the pretty much consistent agreement there, I think everybody who is an adult gamer realizes, is that nobody wants to use Joy-Cons, which is a damning statement, certainly for the Switch 2, is that even if the Joy-Cons are bigger, I don't think anybody in this adults only group of gamers still would have any interest in picking up a Joy-Con. So they really knew their target audience. They really had invested very heavily in electronics as far as setting up the thing. But then as far as the actual tournament goes, I didn't actually participate in it. I didn't really see an interest in that. In the long run, I guess I could have been cannon fodder. It went for basically 3 hours, maybe a little bit longer, which was what they scheduled. Anyway, so I just played free play and hang out, and they missed out on certainly an opportunity, and I didn't even think of it until the end, as far as they needed to try a soft sell to get everybody's email as far as they walked in, and they only really got the emails of people who signed up for the tournament. I walked in, told them my first name, put on a name tag, and then talked to people, and then left. I was given a card for one of the content creators, and I'm going to email him, but certainly it was the case that several people could have walked in and played video games and left, and then you would have no way of getting them on that email list for the next event in 2 months, which, I mean, that's kind of a long time. I definitely wish it was closer to 1 month for video games, and very possibly, if you can coordinate it, a different meetup for different types of games if you want to have a board game night every week of the month, every Thursday, like board games, card games one night, Dungeons and Dragons one night, Magic the Gathering one night, video games one night. Then you'd have 4 separate events with potentially 4 separate groups of people, with a decent amount of overlap if you really wanted to do that. All 4 of them. I also have to say I was pleasantly surprised in that of the people I interacted with, there was only one person who was slightly more of a I don't want to say on the spectrum because that's ridiculous. I'm going to jump over to the next on this day in gaming history chart. It also occurred to me that this would probably be a great source for content creators to do some reminiscing and or maybe even be a source for playing some kind of game as far as just histories. Although in reality, I don't know what really kind of game you could do, because it would be kind of ridiculous for a gamer to remember the exact date that a game was released. Reminiscing is probably the better thing, and then if you can think of a thing, a question, like a Jeopardy style question, then maybe make a round of questions around the game like that. Player One Podcast certainly does that. On the other hand, Player One Podcast's questions alone are made by fans, and you could probably just have one producer take that exact same quiz and apply it to another content creator's channel, as long as they're not watching the Player One Podcast beforehand, and that would work too. But yeah, I don't want to say on the spectrum, but there was one person that was more of that stereotypical, which almost certainly I think last night proved is not a true stereotype gamer nerd, just a little bit young acting, a little bit more aggressive, and like baiting and insulting to the other people in the room sitting next to him. Not terrible, but yeah, he definitely didn't feel like the kind of person I would actively want to play games one-on-one with. Just because he is going to be very much on, yeah, he kind of had that personality, like he's on air, and it's certainly very easy to have like an on-air personality where you're doing the radio shock jock style of gently prodding and poking people, or just straight up fighting things. The Opie and Anthony, the Howard Stern type stuff, that is played up on air, and in reality, face to face. Another player was kind of cussing under their breath a little bit, but not anything terrible. It's just like shoot type stuff when they're doing bad. They are not going on to full on tirades. There definitely didn't seem like there was a lot of gamer bros, that, as I would call them, which is probably a phrase I should stop using there. But also, it was Mario Kart tournament, so I don't think you're going to run into a bunch of first-person shooter players there. There was plenty of women, a surprising amount of women there, which it is certainly great to see one sampling of what the adult gaming world is these days. And I did not personally see anything that spiked up as an issue with the women being disrespected or treated differently in a way of either being coddled or given extra praise or anything, or being treated poorly. In fact, in my experience, I was probably the creepiest person there, with my lack of social skills and experience, in that I saw a woman playing a game next to me, and it looked like her hands were hurting, and I offered her some Tylenol because my hands are hurting right now, and arthritis in them. And then I immediately said to her, I am now just realizing that it's not appropriate for me to offer random pills to strangers in a bar or anywhere else. But yeah, it just, as I was saying it, it ran through my head. Oh yeah, this is like every single stereotype, typical roofie, or bad drug sharing experience story. And yeah, it definitely wasn't that kind of thing. People were drinking, as far as I could tell, in moderation, a high class of beer and wine. The bar itself had like a brewery section just in the corner, not really isolated by a glass wall or anything, which typically, if you're going to see and they're going to show off beer kegs, it is behind a glass wall where they can keep things more sterile. But yeah. So yeah, played some Mario Kart 8, played some Smash Bros. Mostly wanted to just talk and really got struck down on that aspect. There was slightly more people than I would have thought that would get on their phones, which seemed a little weird. There's a couple groups that had formed the kind of tight friend circle issue. It was a fairly small area too, so people were packed in fairly tight. It being a Mario Kart tournament, first and foremost, meant that probably about 16 of the 30 people were always playing on average a game, so you don't want to go up to them and really start talking to them and interrupting them. And when I was playing, I was commenting a little bit, kind of like how I do on when I'm playing actual games, back when I was playing actual games and putting up footage of that, which I'm still too busy to really do right now. But I'm not sure people really even heard me, and definitely I was kind of the only person there. I definitely think I'm still kind of the old man there. I think just the amount of time I've had to play games and the length of time I've played games, there were people there that were starting when they were with the Super NES or the Nintendo 64 era. So just me going back to 1985 with NES, kind of old man. And certainly when we're playing Smash Brothers, there's a lot of people going, who's that character, or what's that from? And yeah, some of that I knew, but also some of that is just like even not on my surface of my mentality, as far as just they asked, like somebody asked who Marth is from, and I know it's a Nintendo Japanese RPG, but there's so many Japanese RPGs, I'm not sure what the actual name of that game is. And then some of the newer things, like there was a Squid Kid in Smash Brothers, and like nobody really knows what that's from too. So there is definitely a range there where games can be too new and targeted to younger audience that the gamers are probably not going to know, and then the games can be more obscure or too old. I think we were playing Smash Brothers Brawl, and it was a new save file, which I think was a mistake because the characters were not unlocked. It was just like the basic characters, and in the process of playing 4-player play, the playthroughs, the other characters started unlocking, and the game just takes a break and makes one player fight the new character to unlock it, which is just weird. It's just a short fight, but it really is just weird to delay the action that much that you would. Here we'll look at yesterday and go back 2 or 3 days. But yeah, it's kind of weird to take a break there. Some of the levels in the Smash Brothers I was playing also are fairly different in that they are thinner and they have different gimmicks to them, and they just don't feel like your standard Smash Brothers level sets, and there's a ton of them, but that's probably for the better to have some more variety. But there definitely were some levels where I just fell off my eyes, and I heard someone else certainly make this complaint. Just having 4 players moving, 4 humans moving characters around is really hard to follow, all on one screen. For us older folks, certainly, who are used to having the camera zoom in and focus only on the main character, one player experiences, or playing in multiplayer experiences where still the camera focuses in only on your character. I jumped around to a bunch of different characters and figuring out the GameCube controllers and all of that was and what buttons do what was kind of hard still. So it really, for Smash Brothers, feels like I really would love for that to be on PC and have a Xbox style controller setup where there's just more buttons to get used to. Mario Kart 2, just like Smash Brothers, feels like they really hasn't evolved much. Mario Kart 8, If anything, it feels like the levels, and 8 years ago Conan Exiles came out, or 8 years and a day ago, or 8 years less a day ago. Yeah, it feels like the levels are somewhat smaller, although that may have just been how the tours and the arcs had been set up to only do 3 laps instead, where it felt like in Mario 64 there was 5 laps. And in general it just feels like the tracks are smaller. Plus they have this really good cheat now in level design in Mario Kart 8. In this is probably not just 8 but more recent ones, in that anytime they're developing a track and there's just a section that doesn't really fit the rest of the section, they can just add a jump that will have you hover or glide from one section to the other. And I'm not sure that the jumps and glides in those times really are adding anything to the experience. When you're forcing every single player to jump, it's not a shortcut, it's not in any way going to really change the experience. But yeah, they have like motorcycles and different types of wheels that you can set up, and so there's like a selection screen where some of it seems like it's cosmetic, and then the wheel types themselves seem like they actually do affect things. I couldn't find a character that felt like it had tight enough controls for me in playing Mario Kart 8. There's a whole coin system where you can collect what seemed like up to 10 coins, and I have no idea what the coins really did. Best speculation was that when you got a coin, your recovery acceleration rate went up. So 10 coins, or staying in 10 coins, gives you some small bonus. It didn't seem like the coins would really affect your pole position in a tournament or anything like that, so yeah. And it was for human players racing, but then there was also a lot of PC players, NPC players in the Mario Kart, and so everybody being unfamiliar with the game was really getting trounced by the NPC players. We were playing at 150cc, which one would assume that that would be the right speed for our level of skill, but it still kind of felt fairly slow. I couldn't figure out how to do the launch burst at the beginning, the 3, 2, 1 go, if that was ever a thing with Mario Kart. And then only after I stopped playing Mario Kart did I see other people doing the jump spark curve trick, which I'd totally forgotten about. I can't really say I was loving any of the new levels of Mario Kart 8. But a lot of the levels also are just remakes of previous tracks from previous games, so Mario Kart 8 is probably the one to buy as the newest one. And at one point I was in the 8th position, and it gave me an infinity symbol of all of the attack items, and so you could just use all the attack items once to catch up and rubber band. I don't think the rubber banding is particularly bad in Mario Kart 8, but yeah, definitely has some of that. But yeah, the new items and abilities aren't particularly amazing or different. Yeah, definitely I was not there to just try out Mario Kart or try out Smash Brothers. If I never played Smash Brothers or Mario Kart again, it really wouldn't be a huge loss to me. But yeah. So, was there anything else at the meetup to really talk about? No. I told the content creators at a YouTube channel that they want me to email them. I imagine they'll look at some of my content and then we'll see what happens there. Their content in particular is already established by 3 three personalities. So I really wouldn't want to be in an in-front camera, which is what they do, fourth wheel situation, even in a crossover thing. I could see myself being the voice behind the camera, old man throwing out topics, throwing out news stories, something closer than that, but like a producer. But also, I don't know if that's what they want, or if I would be fairly qualified for that. But yeah, we'll just see if anything happens there. And really, I don't have a ton of time to do anything with my YouTube channel at the moment. When the Mario Kart tournament ended, one of the three personalities, they were taking photos with the winner, which the winner won a gift card to the same bar, which is fine and all, but I guess you probably don't want the prizes to be that big of a deal. You don't want giant trophies and things like that. I think that's probably the wrong direction to go. But yeah, one of the presenters stuck out his tongue and flipped the middle finger as they were taking the photo, and he was in the back, and I would say he's probably more of the bad boy personality of the group. I've only watched their content for a short time to really figure out the people, and the only thing there is I'd probably take him to the side, or just generally tell people he probably should go down to at least devil horns there instead of flipping the bird. And at a certain point, you just gotta remember that there's other people in that group photo that's supposed to be celebrating the winner of the tournament, so you want to try and keep it more light and friendly and happy on it. But yeah, had he done just devil horns on his tongue out, then alright, that would have been one thing. But yeah, I think flipping the bird comes off potentially too aggressive there. But yeah, not a big issue. Not for me. Everybody's always going down that journey of just improving their character and personality as a content creator. And when everybody has things they can still improve upon. They desperately needed a PA system, and like there just desperately needed to be more coordinating and ordering there. At no point did they like shout out to people and try to organize it and get everybody's attention. So I really didn't know when the tournament had started. I really didn't know which of the 4 TVs were involved in the tournament. There was like no signage or anything. I didn't, had I not really just known it was the end of the night and I have other things to do today, that's why I have a heart out. So I was paying attention to the time there, but that was really the only reason I was paying attention to the tournament, to see whether it ended. They did not yell out and get everybody's attention to congratulate the winner. And so yeah, just kinks that need to be worked out as far as, hey, there needs to be kind of a host. Now I don't want to DJ with a PA system, but there is somebody that needed to have said the tournament is starting, somebody that would have announced each round of the tournaments, congratulating the winners of that round, just to kind of have a more coordinated single experience in the group. Because as it was, without that PA system, without somebody coordinating it, it really was just that there was 4 or 5 different groups of people that happened to be in the same room that were just playing video games. Which, yeah, that's probably not what you want. It's not what I would prefer, is personally, is that I would want it to feel like we were all there, at least being aware of how the tournament went. I don't think it's a real big issue. I'm going to move over to my long-term chart of concurrent games being played, which is an incredibly slow-moving chart. We still have Black Myth Wukong on my chart being fairly popular. Yeah, and I still need to make some major improvements on this chart as far as just reducing the amount of time it's looking over instead of really looking over the course of a year, and having a date label on it to better label what you're seeing here. And probably wouldn't hurt to have an explanation on just what the points mean and how the points work, as far as every time I sample SteamDB, if something's in the first point, which is almost certainly always going to be Counter-Strike 2, it gets 100 points that day. And so it's probably been sampling over the course of 10 or 11 months, 3 times a week. Yeah. So that's really where it gets this main number from. I didn't do a good job explaining that. Which, yeah, that kind of system means anything new has to go over a massive threshold of just being in the top 10 or so of games being played that week for many, many weeks to have that kind of long-term playability and relevancy. Thus, games like Helldivers are not even on this chart, which that is clearly a mistake now that I've been looking at this for a long time, because things like Once Human and DayZ, Crosshair X, they definitely are not as relevant in my mind as Helldivers is. It may also be that Helldivers is a PlayStation exclusive, so that may be a terrible example. Yeah, I think I'm done talking about the meetup. Hopefully I didn't come off too critical there. I am a critic. I did say that at the beginning. There definitely just felt like there's a lot of room for improvement, but it does seem like it was a great starting ground experience. I definitely had a level of trepidation there going in, because there definitely could have been, in my mind, a way worse experience. And let's move on to Steam. And that I would have gotten there, it would have been an in-group of 4 or 5 friends that all knew each other. I would have just been the odd man out that they potentially wouldn't even really wanted to interact with or talk to at all. It could have been a group of like either overly aggressive gamer bros that only play Call of Duty, which I wouldn't have really fit in there personally. It could have been a group of on the spectrum autistic people who can't really communicate at all and are just rambling, and not just don't have any real social cue skills. If anything, I imagine of the people I interacted with, I was one of the people with the least amount of social cue skills there, which that is good, because I need balloons to lift me up in that department, not anchors that would pull me down or irritate me. Because yeah, two people with a lack of social cue skills, in my experience, doesn't mean those two people get along together or better. It just means two people are really bad at getting along and end up irritating each other. Card fight Vanguard is new and trending. Vanguard Dio Days 2. Maybe that's a new spin-off of it. So yeah, great experience. Lots of potential. I hope they continue to do it. I would be fairly shocked and disappointed if the content creators go onto their podcast and say it was a nightmare experience or anything like that, or that they weren't going to do meetups anymore. They said to me that they were really surprised by the number of people. I think that definitely is something that everybody needs to remind themselves, is that you often plan for failure and fail to plan for success. And in their case, they failed to plan for a large amount of success as far as just having a lot of people showing up. I'd have to get to know them better, but I definitely feel like their meetups could benefit from one of my Raspberry Pi setups with just NES ROMs. I'm not sure how they would feel about that, but there is definitely a room for setting one up for those NES, Super NES era games. And I could do that pretty quick and dirty without having to spend a lot of work on it, curating other ROMs onto it. And so then, but then my build is only for the Raspberry 3B Plus, so it's not going to really run Nintendo 64 games well. And I think you probably would want to put just standard like controllers there and not have the mess that Nintendo 64 controllers are. If anything, it probably would make sense to have two, if you got big enough, one with Nintendo 64 style controllers plugged into it, just focusing on Nintendo 64 games, versus one that has NES style controllers or Super NES style controllers hooked up to it, focusing on those games, or very possibly just Xbox controllers hooked up to it, focusing on those games. But yeah, since the meetup was in the bar, they did manage to completely avoid the kids issue. There were no kids, and no kids would have been allowed in the bar. So that's where my RetroPie setup would need some tweaking, since it really was designed for younger kids. But yeah, I could see people being even older than me who would have played Nintendo 64 or Super NES, NES, early console games like that, and I could see where that would bring in that different audience. Plus, there were definitely some wives and girlfriends there that were non-gamers. Wives, girlfriends, husbands that don't game. Friends of gamers, let's just call them that. That's an easier phrase to use. And so having something that's a little bit simpler to say, hey, here's some old school games if you're into that real retro stuff, that would be beneficial. On the other hand, instead of doing a Raspberry Pi build, a Steam Deck would do the same thing, but if you're going to bring out a Steam Deck, which is once again a very expensive device, at that point you're approaching PC games and your Steam library, and it makes very less sense to hamstrung a Steam Deck to just playing retro games. Plus, I have to be fairly biased in saying I haven't set up my Steam Deck to run a bunch of older games and ROMs and emulators, so that would be more work than I have time to do in the foreseeable future. So yeah, if you were going to bring a Steam Deck in there and plug it into a TV, that is probably where you would have your PC games. Things, one of the content creators was talking to me about Jackbox Party Pack as another kind of party game. That's where you can connect via phone to play as a player there, and that being on a big screen also kind of makes sense. Too. So there is definitely room for a Steam Deck. There's definitely room for Nintendo Switches because you want those Nintendo games, and there's definitely room for a Raspberry Pi and cheaper retro things. And for the cost of Raspberry Pi 3B Pluses, getting a case, getting controllers, you're only $100 in. You can make 4 or 5 of those for the price of one Steam Deck. If you were just going to be PC gaming only as a group, then the investment as far as Steam Decks makes some sense. I probably would go cheaper and not get the OLED model, but no, I'd still suggest the OLED model because there's better processor and battery life in the OLED models. But yeah, it is a vast difference between buying 3 Joy-Con Nintendo Switches and buying 3 Steam Decks, though. You would be just investing a lot more money. And that's one thing that the content creators that running this group really impress upon me, is that they have really committed and put a lot of money into the event and a lot of effort into it, and that's applaudable. They put a lot of effort and polish into their podcast and their podcast studio, which is applaudable certainly too. And yeah, the thing that I would say that they next would want to work on is just making more content overall, having more opinions when talking about content, which that is a big thing about content creators, that you need to develop that fairly quickly, in my opinion, is to be opinionated, to have something to say. There's way too much competition of content creators out there who will get on screen and say basically nothing. Some of them literally will say nothing, so you have like the no commentary streams that you're unfairly competing against on YouTube, but some will barely say anything and just go yeah, that's great, that's cool, and then just be really chill on it, way too chill, and just that's not going to be content that's going to be unique and bring back an audience in the long run. And then you'll have people that will just describe things, and that is, I think, the bare minimum, is that if you're going to just describe what a game is and somewhat generically describe your experience, saying, yeah, I liked it, without really getting into the details and the weeds, or provoking any real questions and conversations around the games. That's really where the worst parts of the Giant Bomb podcast started to show up, is that you would have what felt like 4 or 5 people, supposedly professional game critics, sitting around the table, and one person would just kind of do their book report on the game, like the book report they wrote the night before, just kind of describing the game overall, and then saying at the end, overall I generally liked it, and that's just like not really getting too much into the details, which that's what you really want to strive for as a content creator, is to put your personality into it and put your criticism into it and your observations into it. Get those details in. Same with a book report, a good book report. And I am a weird person to make this, as someone who probably never actually have turned in a single book report in their entire school career. It's crazy. I even graduated. But yeah, you want details. You want not just stating basic facts. You want to make that what could be 5-word sentence be stretched out into a 3 to 5 sentence paragraph on just one element of detail. And for me, and for I imagine most content creators, since you're just doing that verbally, getting that gift of gab, developing that is very helpful. And I think that's where the bare minimum of content creators need to be. And eventually, as you grow an audience, as you develop your own personality on screen, you become somewhat of a personality who is perhaps at that other end of the spectrum. Once you become that personality after many years and lots of success, you want to struggle a little bit just to get back to being closer to center and still have details and descriptions. Otherwise, you become the kind of video game donkey style content creator, or Angry Joe style video game content creator, or video game nerd style of content creator, where you're being hamstrung in just being that personality, and pigeonholed into being that personality, and first and foremost, and you're barely talking about the game at all. Video Game Donkey is a great example of that, where he barely talks about games, and a lot of what he says is not true for the effect of being funny. Let's see if the Steam Deck is in stock as far as refurbs go. Yeah, I still, if you were going to buy Steam Decks for tournament reasons, I'd still say get the LED model. And yeah, that's a lot of money though. Even if you get it refurbed would be the way to go if you can get them. But yeah, at some point, PewDiePie is kind of the only exception to the rule, where you have a massive successful personality who was able to get away from being a Minecraft gamer a lot of times to being more of whatever he wanted to be. And so you have just enough people following you where getting away from any specific one type of content was not as damaging to him as it would be to any other content creator. But yeah, Video Game Nerd is also kind of a great example of somebody who had success being this personality who didn't really even care about video games that much, and his friend, who really doesn't work with him anymore, was a video game fan. Video Game Nerd was just kind of a good character actor that succeeded because he got in very early. And yeah, guess I'll leave it at that. Alright, well, I do have that hard out, so that's. I probably need to stop saying we'll do a warm up section and then we'll get into the video game news and start saying we're going to do about an hour of warm up and then I'll get into the video game news, because it always is about an hour of warm up before I get to the actual news articles. And that is certainly something I wish there was a better way to do that and have like a separate pre-show stream and then swap it over real fast to the news part, and just do a live clip. But YouTube hasn't added those features. What YouTube is experimenting with, I saw, is a Reddit Gold like system called Hype, which if they announced it, I forgot about it. And yeah, I'm saying it's like Reddit Gold. It definitely seems like Reddit Gold to be fairly scammy, in that they're going to have some kind of leaderboard. It seems like it is just straight up one leaderboard for the entire front page of YouTube, which I don't know how many people actually go to the front page of YouTube per se, because yeah, most people are using a YouTube app, and I don't know how you even get to YouTube's front page from the YouTube app. But people are capable of hyping 3 videos per day for free, and then you can pay to hype videos more than 3 videos for free. No, you get 3 free to get you into the system, and then you have to pay. And it seems like it might very well be an unlimited amount of paying. They're claiming that this is going to be balanced in some way, and that bonus points are given to smaller content creators, so it isn't just going to be PewDiePie fans paying to hype PewDiePie videos. Although, so far, I don't know how you create a system where you couldn't have just a group of trolls come in from, let's say, Kiwi Farms or Reddit or wherever, pick a really small video that is embarrassingly bad and just hype it. Or let's say there's a cancel culture effort going on, which and then you just have a whole bunch of people hyping up a video that makes somebody look bad. Or I mean, it could fall into politics very quickly, in that you're having political videos just getting hyped up to the top of the leaderboard, and that doesn't sound particularly fun. Speaking of cancel culture, there is a incident with Minecraft, the group of Minecrafters that is fairly popular, in that they kicked out after allegations were made against one of their members, Iskul, and well, I don't know if they kind of forced Iskul to quit, according to Iskul at least, and I think that may very well have been a mistake on his part. He has been silent for several months, and then he put a video out explaining his side of the situation, and he claims that this is just basically a cancel attack. He's not inherently denying that he made some sexual messaging between 2 consenting adults, but he's denying that anything there was inappropriate, and that was just his personal life. And maybe there is something that would be proved out there, in that maybe you shouldn't flirt with people that are in any way affiliated with somehow working with you, but that's also a very high bar as far as how things go. So yeah, there would be questions as far as an imbalance of powers there, to whether or not inter-office dating would be inappropriate or not, which is effectively what this seems like it was, at least according to Iskall. And he's opened up a police thing. I think Iskall might be in the UK, so he may have a lot more slander or extortion protections there. And some of this cancel event, a lot of people very quickly, according to him, just turned their backs on him. And he has this whole Vault Hunters project where other developers tried to force him into signing a document to hand over control to him. Minecraft, he claims, gave him like an hour and a half to come to this emergency meeting, and in my opinion, and he, instead of going to this emergency meeting, which was almost certainly the wise move and under the advice of lawyers, probably exactly what they tell you to do is no, don't get in this emergency meeting. But he chose to leave Minecraft. I think in particular he should have just stayed silent there and not responded to them at all, which is, yeah, no communication is probably your best bet there. Is just go completely radio silent. If Minecraft demanded that he show up at an emergency meeting, don't respond to it at all, and better than responding to it. And then you put 100% of all the actions onto Minecraft. Minecraft seemed very quickly and willing to condemn him and then completely delete him from from the history. So it definitely does have some of that cancel culture feel going on. On the other hand, I mean, you're going to have to make your own personal decisions as far as how much you believe Iskall in his videos. His one video that he's put out explaining his side of the situation. And that's another thing certainly to think about as far as collaborating, is that you've really got to be careful about who you collaborate with, and frankly, a code of conduct on day one seems like a really smart move as far as it goes, because you're trying to be a celebrity here, and that is just a part of celebrity these days, is that there is just a cancel culture thing, and there is just a lot of drama that will come out that nobody wants. So you need a plan for it, and you need to be able to trust everybody you're working with as best as you can. And I got onto that rant, and I'm not sure, I feel like there was something else I was going to talk about, but let's go through the video game news. We'll go through the Video Games Chronicle. There's my general description on there. One of the other content creators, not the ones running the meetup, but just persons I met there, I watched one of their videos, and they were just typing as they were talking notes into Notepad and showing it on the screen. And if I ever get back with that content creator, I'm definitely going to suggest that they use PowerPoint and screen capture there, or use Google Presentation, I think is what it's called, which is just the Google Online PowerPoint, which is what this is, and how I make this. And this is just my lack of artistic ability presentation on that. But yeah, for what they wanted to say, their presentation would have been a million times better had they made a Google presentation slideshow, and then they just had a keyboard shortcut to go to different slides. This one only has one slide with each presentation, each talking point. It would have been a million times better. Plus, she would have thought her thoughts through once already, been a little bit more online as far as talking about the subject. Of course, also, her video desperately needed a noise gate and noise suppression on the microphone. too. She told me she was using OBS, Streamlabs, not OBS. Let's not confuse those two. But yeah, Streamlabs, I googled it, seems to have a noise gate on the audio and noise suppression, so playing around with that, just having your microphone on, having headphones plugged into your computer, and listening to see what you can hear, and turning up the noise gate, in particular when you're not talking until you no longer hear anything at all, will get rid of the background audio. Just do it with a fan on, however you're going to comfortably be in that room, with your computer on, things like that. Well, obviously your computer's got to be on, but like, you know, your computer fans going at their normal speed. You just turn up that noise gate that far, and at that point you may not even really need noise suppression once you're not hearing any of the background stuff. That's just an alarm. In fact, another alarm's gonna go off in like an hour. I just wanted to make sure I woke up today, which there was definitely a possibility that I'd just sleep in. But yeah, setting up your microphones so you sound good in the room with a noise gate in is a good trick. And I think I'm gonna, instead of starting with video games, I think I'm gonna take a small bathroom break. That's another thing as a content creator I really can't do, is actually sit through the whole stream. One thing I did remember that I didn't say about the meetup is at the end, I thought I would be like overly hyped having such a good experience and just have trouble falling asleep because of that, but no, it was kind of a calming happiness. Now I've still got other people causing me anxiety, as it were, keeping me up at night. In fact, yeah, today potentially could go very badly as far as interactions with people, but I'm just crossing my finger and hoping that that won't be the case, and there's a decent chance that it won't be the case, but who knows. But yeah, no, the meetup itself, as I was lying in bed after it, it's like I wasn't exhausted really, didn't do anything that physically demanding or anything, but to be exhausted by. You know, it was just kind of a calming, hey, that went really well feeling, and that's a great feeling to have. It's not a feeling I'm particularly familiar with, frankly, and so I didn't, in the experience, I think, overly love bomb anybody or talk their ear off or offer too much, or try to be way too friendly and to come off too strong, which I'm good for that. But I am kind of sad that the next meetup is potentially going to be in 2 months. I definitely feel like once a month would make more sense for most people, and then for me, just having a lot of free time, which I really don't, but at some point in the future I might. Like, maybe I would start hanging out more or collaborating more with the content creators, but they're working jobs too. I'm sure that for as much as they've committed financially, almost certainly they're working other jobs. So yeah, I could see you would potentially have these meetups as public meetups, and then you might pick a group of people that's like, hey, these are the people we know, we've seen them at meetups multiple times, let's pick them and make them part of a private group and have more casual I actually trust these people to come to my house and play games with me type group. Where, yeah, that is definitely an in group and kind of unfair, but not a terrible thought too, is to just kind of say, hey, we know some people at this meetup are a little too strong. We really don't match with them that well. If they want to do Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering meetups, things like that, which I'm not sure they really would want to do any of that, I would definitely say you would want to find an in-group and have like a mailing list of people that you really want there to show up, and not have those be open random groups of people, just to filter out the absolutely horrible antisocial players. But yeah, for me, I could see going to those kinds of events, even though I really don't care about playing Dungeons and Dragons or Magic the Gathering. I'm capable and willing to play them if it just gives me something more to do and lets me have some kind of relationship skills development practice. And maybe it wouldn't just be this group of people. Maybe I just need to spread out to different groups of people and have like 4 different groups of people that I meet up with once a week. And that's not too crazy, really. It's been in the past fairly common for people to have Friday poker games on a weekly basis. So similar kinds of ideas, or football fans going over to different people's houses and watching football games on once a week. But maybe even once a week is too much. Yeah. Anyways, I'm going to take a small break and pause the recording, and then I'll be right back, and then we'll start the news. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Alright, so Video Games Chronicle news. Let's go through it. My macros, as much as they can be helpful, they are also still a pain. YouTube changed its layout of its website a little bit on YouTube Studio, so I ended up having to make a couple tweaks just to get shorts scheduled. Shorts should be going out again now. Of course, I need to make shorts, I need to upload shorts, and I have no way of really automating that process more than I already have. So it still is very much a case where you can only upload about 100 videos a day, including 3-minute shorts. So that need to do that and take that quota every single day. There is definitely an argument to pushing the timing code on shorts to go over the period of 90 days instead of 60 days. I'd already bumped it up from 30 days to 60 days, but yeah, having more shorts scheduled for a longer period of time gives me more of a margin to schedule more later. But yeah, as far as the news macros that open all the tabs, Video Games Chronicle is still completely broken, and so I'm having to manually open all the news articles. It's not that difficult there, but it's just one more thing that takes a few more minutes. So Video Games Chronicle has a reminder that the paid version of Animal Crossing Pocket Camp is only half price for one more day. The introductory price for Nintendo's mobile game ends on January 31st. It is also, I guess, worth mentioning, I'm not sure if we'll see an article about it, that the new expansion for Pokemon TCG Pocket is out, in which they have 2 new packs, and they've hidden the first 3 packs. You can go back and find them, but it's kind of hard to find them to go back and open those. These 2 new packs have a lot of later generation Pokemon, so getting around to actually playing Pokemon, playing the card game and learning these new cards is going to take me a while, and just learning what the Pokemon even are. I probably will never really memorize their names. I'll probably just start to memorize what they look like. So yeah, they definitely are jumping fairly quickly to a whole new generation, which, in fairness, it may just be the generation after the original 150 Pokemon. I don't think it is. I think these are fairly newer things, but once you get past Mew and Mewtwo, anything in the Pokedex after that, I pretty much don't have a clue as far as any of its Pokemons go. So I really probably only did play Pokemon Red or Blue, and never played anything else as far as Pokemon goes. I probably played Pokemon Stadium, and I imagine that still was the original 150 Pokemon or so. With the new expansion, they've implemented a trade feature that, now that I've experienced it, I can say is pretty awful, in that you're constantly accruing these timer wait tokens to do a trade, and so there's just this currency delaying trading cards for no good reason, because to do a trade you also need to offer up a different currency of trade coins, which vary in cost based on the level of cards you're trying to trade. But the main problem is the trade system at all, in that you can really just offer up cards to one friend to trade, and then you just have to wait and see if that one friend will trade with you. Because Pokemon TCG Pocket has multiple language players playing against each other. The trade has this add-on effect in which I immediately defriended all the Japanese named friends I had, because I do not want Japanese language versions of the cards. I only want English versions of the cards. So the friend system has been completely countermanded here, in that you can have up to 99 friends, but you want a shorter friends list to be able to offer trades to people in the hopes that somebody would accept a trade. And it just seems like a weird trading system that maybe if you offered it up to everybody, like all of your friends could potentially trade you this one card or give you trade offers on this one card, that you would get multiple trade offers for the one card you're offering up for trade, and you pick the one that you're most interested in. Maybe all of that would make a little bit more sense. But yeah, my main goal starting off with the trade system is just to use up the trade wait timers as fast as possible and figure out how you get trade coins, which that may come around from actually playing against other players, which I haven't done that. The newest expansion also adds some new solo challenge things that I am more than likely going to breeze through, which will give me another currency to then buy another kind of currency and or cosmetic items. As far as how it goes, it's just currencies transferring from one currency to the other. There's not an event happening right now with the new expansion, so they're giving you a little bit of time to build up your collection of the new cards and build decks, but I imagine by the time there is a first event, I still probably won't be playing the game too much to have built a new deck. So yeah, with the new expansion, the Wonder Trade system, which is a pretty good system to fill in your occasional, have a chance of filling in your occasional missing cards, but it gets messed up with every new expansion in that everybody is going to be opening packs of the new expansion, so you're going to get a bunch of offers as far as Wonder Trades, or Wonder Picks. They're not trades. You're going to get a lot of offerings of low-level cards that you will get opening card packs from the new expansion anyways. And even if you did get a Wonder Pick with a high-level card, which you can tell based on how shiny the edges are, basically, there's no guarantee that taking that Wonder Pick is still a good idea, because you may get that unique shiny edge card just opening packs too. And yeah, I'm still playing Memento Mori. Memento Mori right now has not brought in their next new character, so it's been fairly quiet. I did think at the meetup yesterday that maybe I would pull out my phone and either show them the Godot clock app that I'm working on. Didn't come up, couldn't talk to people too much because of that, or pull out my phone and show off Memento Mori or Pokemon TCG Pocket. But really the only time I pulled out my phone was 2 times to look at the clock, so I barely pulled it out of my pocket, looked at it and put it back in without even unlocking the screen. And then once I pulled it out and brought up my YouTube app and had the content creators type in their YouTube channel name and subscribe, so I can give them subscribes and look at their channel. Inherently, it's still important to point out that I went there to make relationships and friends. I really wasn't there to try to make business relationships. So yeah, I'm not trying to be a consultant to other content creators with my failed channel that's only slightly more successful than other people's channels. Although I can give advice here and there and give ideas, some of which may be bad ideas, all of which may be bad ideas, let's be honest. But yeah, I definitely was trying my very best to not walk in there and just like write on the name tag, subscribe to my channel, or hey everybody, I got a YouTube channel, please subscribe, or please watch it. Like, I'm not there just to shill myself. That was not my goal. I tried, and I don't think I really brought it up to anybody first. Like, everybody else said, hey, I have a YouTube channel, and I go, oh well, I also have one. And that's really the level I wanted it to be. Anyways, supposed to be going through video games news, supposed to be getting all of this done fairly quickly, so let's not get into too many more rambles. Let's see, a Capcom Spotlight and Monster Hunter Wild Showcase double bill is coming next week. It's going to be a 36-minute presentation on February 4th. Game site denies the founder has day-to-day involvement after he imitates the Elon Musk salute. I don't know what game site this is. Let's get that detail for it. The God is a Geek game site is not one I have heard of at all. In fairness, there's just so many video game sites, and none of them, very few of them, are even worth listening to. So the entire editorial staff has quit, is the update here. This is happening a lot. Well, that you're having people imitate Elon Musk's salute. One comment on that he did during the inauguration that to a lot of people looked like a Nazi salute, and I personally would say I would classify as a Nazi salute. One interesting thing there is that the Roman salute, basically there's no evidence that the Romans ever actually used a salute like that. People in the United States used a salute like that pre the Nazis doing a hand upward at an angle gesture, and that's why in the United States they actively swapped it over to the hand over the heart salute, which is fairly unique. But yeah, as far as I can tell, it doesn't seem like there really is any evidence that the Romans ever actually did use a salute like that, and that was more just TV and propaganda that led people to believe to that. Regardless, it doesn't really matter. It's the same thing like the Hindu swastika. Well, they don't call it swastika, they call it something else. I want to say NIMBY, but that's very possibly wrong. Like, once something is affiliated with your symbol that's so bad, whether that something happened before or after in time, that symbol is just forever tainted. And the salute is just an example of a symbol like that, where it's like it's just forever tainted, and you definitely should not be doing it. And so several people have been potentially talking about it, potentially defending it, maybe not even defending it, maybe just talking about it and then repeating the salute, and it's got people really upset. I would say, before moving on quickly, that there's a lot more to be upset with, and focusing in on a salute in particular, like, this priest also did that and was fired. But yeah, there's a lot more that would be better focused on as far as being upset. The fact that, like, when Congress in the United States stopped all grants for a bit there, like food stamps and child support and healthcare and all of that was cut off and shut down. I think they maybe restored all of that, but I'm not 100% sure they have. That's a big deal. People very likely went hungry. Hopefully nobody starved to death because of that. And so there are deeper issues and actions to focus on. I'm not sure what I would specifically point out in video games, but yeah. An outwardly symbol may speak to inward attitudes and inward actions, inside actions, but the getting to the crust of the matter, the crux of the matter. Man, I'm using the wrong word today. Is probably better. Yeah, the fact that the price of eggs is still skyrocketing and corporate greed is still at a massive high is stuff to focus on, stuff that can change and would be more impactful if it did change than a salute. Because Elon Musk is going to be Elon Musk, and whether or not he gets powers is almost exclusively down now to whether the presidency wants to give him power or not, since the elections have already happened. Presidency and Congress and House of Representatives. Yeah, whatever the politicians want to do there or not. So yeah. Again, I've never even heard of God is a Geek. It's kind of a provocative website title name anyways. So it really has no relevance to me that their entire editorial staff quit. Frankly, it's hard to value the editorial staff of any mainstream video game journalism site, and while I do kind of pity them somewhat in that they tend to be overworked and underpaid, I also can't pity them too much in that they tend to have done a fairly poor job as far as being good objective journalists, or yeah, good in the sense of making good content. Moving on, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black is getting balance adjustments and additional features next month. That's not really the kind of game I would expect would need balance adjustments and additional features. You'd just kind of expect that to happen on launch, but okay, maybe it needed it. It'd be nice if games were perfect before they were released. And personally, I don't think they really teased this game or had a release date around it, so it feels to me like they could have delayed the launch to have it more polished at release. Let's see, PlayStation's 30th anniversary PS5 themes are leaving, but Sony says they'll be back. They're going to be removed at the end of January. Was there a way to keep them? I don't think there was. Like, I don't think it's going to be something as easy as you just... I suppose if you unplug the PlayStation that had them and then rolled back the clock, that might work to keep them. I don't think it's potentially worth it to do that, but this really speaks to just the weirdness of how PlayStation is still doing things and how they are more interested in maintaining the branding and the advertisement that they want you to see, versus allowing the small percentage of PlayStation fans that are even going to use these themes to experience the PlayStation they want. Anybody else would see that it's fairly obvious these themes should have been put out, applauded for being put out, and that's it. People should just be able to use those themes for the rest of their lives. But it definitely has the licensed not owning feel even for a theme here, in that they are more than happy to take something away from you just because they want it. They don't want you to have it, which on a larger scale speaks to not buying games digitally on the PlayStation, that you really shouldn't do that, because if they're so controlling that they won't even let you keep a theme, or let you download themes if your console breaks and you buy a new one, or if you make a new account, then that definitely speaks that they will be willing to do the same with games. Take your games away from you. The Video Game History Foundation's digital library is now out in early access. We had already been told this was coming, so this is just an update reminder to say it happens. It includes promotional material and then more than 15,000 out of print magazines. I found their YouTube channel and subscribed to that, so that seems to be like getting some attention, but I haven't watched their release video, so I haven't really looked at it. One would wonder, certainly as far as just this video in particular, one is going to just wonder how much overlap this content is with retromagazines.com or the archive.org setup. So that's where the overlap is going to be, certainly. And it's probably good timing, considering Game Informer is now dead, and that was the last mainstream print magazine around video games that I know of. So the entire media is now in this dead state, and just time to archive it, I suppose. It is interesting that like Amazon.com doesn't have like a Game Informer style only on Kindle magazine, but that's probably too much money for Amazon to spend for too small of an audience. But yeah, it certainly could have happened where you get Kindles for your kids, and with getting a Kindle with your kids, there is a magazine that is talking about video games like Game Informer, and very much just pushing kids to want to buy video games. And perhaps Amazon would spread it out and not just talk about video games, but talk about all of their toys that they have available for sale. But Amazon kind of struggles to even do that, because even when they put out their Christmas advertisement magazines, they can really only advertise some very in stock, very common items, because anything small or low stock is just not going to be actually available for purchase. So yeah, there is an argument there that they could do something like that, try to convince kids to be good capitalists and spend on their Kindles. That is kind of the only place you would have magazines, actual print magazines these days. Too expensive to print, too small of an audience. Print media is dead, has been dead for decades, in most cases. Let's see, spectacular announcements and reveals are apparently coming to the Summer Game Fest 2025. Jeff Keighley's annual showcase will take place on June 6th. It still feels like between the Summer Game Fest and the Video Game Awards, those are two events, and really I kind of prefer there to be only one event from Jeff Keighley. Having canceled in your title or in your thumbnail and making a video is highly likely to get people to watch your videos, and this has nothing to do with that, but I just thought of it. So what I was thinking of is that if you're a video game content creator, if you could make a list of games that have been announced that you think are canceled, you could fairly frequently, maybe twice a year, make a video that has canceled in the title and just is clickbaity, as it were. And why I was thinking of that now is because the Summer Game Fest would be about the right time to do that, where they would announce a whole bunch of games, and so you could compare that to games that have yet to be released and weren't talked about, and say, hey, we think this game is canceled, we think this game is canceled, think this game is canceled. Unfortunately, it would be extremely broadly speculative and just kind of misleading and deceptive type content, and you'd have to work around that to your comfort level, because very few games are going to actually officially be canceled, and many games are just going to be in development hell forever, and they're going to possibly be canceled silently. But yeah, we'll get to a story of the type of game where you could talk about it being canceled. But yeah, that's a shame that you really have to think that way with YouTube and say, hey, how can I do a clickbait video and have canceled in the title, just because people click on those types of provocative narratives. But there is, I think, something in the idea of trying to just go back and compare what was announced the previous year at a Summer Games Fest versus what was announced this year, and see how that goes. Have a reoccurring, semi-regular series of should this game be canceled as a concept, or do you think this game is canceled, or what would happen, how would you feel if it was canceled. There might be a whole who, what, where, and why of different ways you could have the word canceled in conversation topics around games. Yeah. But yeah, that definitely is just search engine optimization thinking, though. It's not a natural thing you would do. Let's see, moving on, WWE 2K is returning to mobile this year as a Netflix exclusive. The last WWE 2K game on iOS and Android was over a decade ago. Yeah. I don't know if Netflix owns WWE completely, but they definitely feel like right now they have major ownership of WWE. I question heavily whether a mobile wrestling game makes sense, even if it was streaming. Just, I don't know. You could make maybe a mobile phone idle game with wrestling characters, a gacha game with wrestling characters. I wonder if that is the last WWE game. Would be the one with the cards. I don't think it is. There was a gacha card collecting thing around WWE characters a long time ago that I know some people were somewhat excited about. But I can't even remember the name. I did have someone tell me at the meetup that they're remaking Black Flag, and I didn't remember that. But after I slept on it, it does seem familiar that was being announced. Let's see, Forza Horizon 5 is coming to the PS5 in the spring. That's about all I want to say about that. Dr. Disrespect's Midnight Society is shutting down, and its free-to-play first-person shooter is cancelled. The studio is closing months after it split from Guy, quote, Dr. Disrespect BM, which, yeah, I had remembered they had already separated from him, but I imagine you're just going to have that issue in which it's going to follow you around, and there's just going to be a major office politics shift when you have a company lose its figurehead in such a way. On the other hand, you could also just leave Dr. Disrespect completely out of it and say this is just an all too common story in which game developers don't get across the finishing line and actually release a game. Yeah. Moving on, Ridge Racer 64 is now on the Switch Online, marking its first ever re-release. Interesting. There is an interesting thing here too, in that I'm not sure you see too many nicely tight latex type dress clad characters in Nintendo games, or games that feel like they're Nintendo first party titles these days. Or really, you don't even really see humans that are in a anatomically correct proportion in Nintendo games. Mario, Princess Peach, Toad, all of them really more cartoony and not anatomically correct. Yeah, this is almost certainly a sad statement in that there has been a growing divide over many years in that Japanese game developers, if they want to show an attractive person, are making completely different games for completely different consoles, whereas Ridge Racer very well may have been an example of where I assume Japanese developer was able to put in an attractive character in the racing game. Racing games in general do have this issue where the best way, even now, to get people to relate to it is to have a figurehead attractive character that is in the advertisement and may not even really be in the game at all. Certainly this game looks very blocky, and yeah, when I was playing Mario Kart in particular, Mario Kart 8, it definitely felt like the controls were tighter and the game was faster on the Nintendo 64 version. But I wonder if that really is true, or if I just have faulty memory there. But yeah, you can even see in that advertisement there, which I assume is based off of an old advertisement, how much they were emphasizing a human aspect to it and emphasizing this character. The Nintendo 64 era, though, definitely was also targeting more teenage and older men and boys. So you definitely did see that. Cruising USA, same thing there, where there was attractive ladies here and there showing off. And it wasn't really until the Wii that Nintendo started to really focus once again on only kid-friendly content. Nintendo 64 in particular was the peak of targeting teenage boys with things like Killer Instinct and Conker's Bad Fur Day and several other games. I'm sure I could make a whole list if I tried, but I don't have time. Puzzles and Dragon Studio has been told to up its game by angry shareholders. Gungyo has been accused of greatly increasing its president's pay while operating profits plummet. Interesting that shareholders are pushing back a little bit, but also this would just be a case of shareholders pushing back to get more money for themselves, instead of it going to the president's pay. There's up its game here, as a quote, really plays no role as far as improving Puzzle and Dragon games, which I think I played Puzzles and Dragons once and wasn't particularly amazed by it as far as a match 3 game. It's fine, but not something that I really wanted to commit a lot of time to and play. Let's see, Shang-Chi star Simu Liu says his dream is a Sleeping Dogs movie, then a sequel game. He's a Marvel star. He's saying he's working with the rights holder to make a Sleeping Dogs film happen. So there definitely feels like there's a chance here that we're going to see a era eventually approach of a new era of Asian kung fu mobster style movies and coming out based off of video games, which, yeah, we could use that. I'm not sure how much of it's really going to be kung fu or wire fu, though it may very well just be more mobster stuff. We'll see how well that works and how well that goes in the film industry that is dying in general. Diversity in films, in all the different ways you could apply diversity, would almost certainly help. There's not enough films, not enough genres, not enough different people specifically in movies. Too many movies with the same actors over and over again. Not enough diversity in ethnicity and gender, because it's just the same people over and over again, often in movies. So yeah, just more movies with different people is something I would appreciate. I'd like movies to be good also, but that may be asking too much these days. Let's see, Multiverse's 5th season will be its last, with the game being delisted at the end of May. The game will be playable offline for the foreseeable future, Warner Brothers says. I'm wondering if this is a new announcement or not, because I recall that they had already said something fairly negative that pointed to the end of Multiverses, but they may have just said previously that the 4th season was going to barely add any content. But yeah, it definitely feels like Multiversus is dead, which is a shame, having just yesterday played Smash Brothers. That there is definitely a feel that there's room for a Smash Brothers game like Smash Brothers on PC, and it's not going to come from Nintendo, so Multiversus could have definitely been it. But yeah, that didn't happen, and clearly it's not going to happen. The overly optimistic view might be that, well, maybe Multiversus is going to shut down so that all these characters would then be licensed in a more universal Smash Brothers style game, instead of Multiversus really being limited to just what Warner Brothers owns, which is still a ton of characters, but yeah, not all of them. It is a little surprising that there isn't that there isn't like a Marvel or DC comic book Smash Brothers game where it's just the vast pantheon of characters from the Marvel universe or the DC universe. If they could do a whole crossover, that would be great. But even if you didn't do a crossover, that might make a lot of people happy too. But it's kind of stupidly obvious that a DC or Marvel Smash Brothers would make a lot of sense. Of course, you have the issue of like Superman and Batman fighting Calendar Man or something like that, where they might be really underpowered. But yeah, they did make the Injustice fighting games, one-on-one fighting games, but yeah, that's not really a Smash Brothers game. Yeah, I'm looking at the clock here, and I really only have an hour left, and I'm gonna be late otherwise, so I'm gonna have to move through this really fast. We had already covered February's PlayStation Plus Essential games, so I'm gonna move on there. Quantic Dreams Beyond Two Souls is getting a TV series adaptation. Yeah, Elliot Page is his name now. Has apparently bought his production company has acquired the rights to make a Beyond Two Souls TV show. Although weirdly, I don't think Elliot Page makes sense to be the main protagonist of that TV series, even though Elliot Page in his previous pre-transition transgendered transition was the actor who played the main protagonist of Beyond Two Souls. So it would be a real weird situation if Elliot Page was actually going to be involved in that. On the other hand, clearly there must be some motivating reason that they would want to make a TV show around it. Yeah. This will be something that almost certainly we'll talk about more later, depending on how far it gets. Many things start with acquiring the rights and then just fall apart in pre-production. Anyways, although this is more evidence of a growing trend of video game based TV and movie content. Although weirdly, I think it might take decades before you'd have old people that only watch TV and movies and don't play video games watching that kind of content based off of video games and enjoying it, perhaps even to the point of wanting to play the games. Here's one you could certainly make an episode with cancelled in the title. BioWare has confirmed that it is downsizing as it doesn't require support from the full studio. for Mass Effect. What this effectively means is a number of BioWare roles are being terminated following Dragon Age the Veilguard's release, and it means that if there is another Dragon Age game, it's likely not going to be made by the same people that made Dragon Age the Veilguard, whether you think that's a good thing or not, or the same people that made any of the Dragon Age games, likely. So yeah, they are going all in and focusing on the next Mass Effect, which in fairness is probably the right move, because they need the next Mass Effect to not be a buggy mess like Andromeda, and they need it to succeed, otherwise they are going to prove that as a company they have no capability of riding the stream and riding the momentum of failure that is around the Mass Effect series right now because of Andromeda. Spider-Man 2's PC features and specs have been revealed on the eve of the game's release, which I assume means that it's releasing on PC tomorrow. Which, yeah, if I had infinite money and infinite time, I would have played Spider-Man 1 on PC and been ready day one to play Spider-Man 2. Let's see. Xbox revenue fell 7% in quarter 2 as hardware sales dropped 29%. I think we had already talked about this in the last stream, so I'll leave it at that. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle has been played by over 4 million players, according to Microsoft, which I guess you have to believe them. Microsoft also says that Black Ops 6 topped Xbox and PlayStation game sales in the holiday quarter, which is definitely believable. There wasn't a lot of competition there. And then Japan's eShop, the Nintendo Switch's Japan eShop, is no longer accepting foreign cards or PayPal to prevent fraudulent use. Players will have to find new ways to buy from the Japanese eShop, which there are services like that almost certainly exist or will pop up to exist, where you can pay a Japanese company to put money into a Japanese account and buy games there. It's probably going to be a little risky and shady to do that if you absolutely want the Japanese versions of games from the Japanese eShop. I suspect that this is 90% to prevent fraudulent use, as they say, but it is 10%, I suspect, based on just a continuing trend of Japanese companies and banks not wanting to work with PayPal or Visa or MasterCard or any of the Western banking systems, in a pretty decent reason for it too, in the fact that PayPal and Visa and MasterCard, well, their kind of parent company, I think it's called Swift, is imposing Western United States law as far as censorship on anybody that they're doing business with. So if you happen to be running a porn site, let's just go with porn, that is fully acceptable and within the laws of Japan, in Japan, but you happen to be accepting PayPal, PayPal was going in there and saying, we want you to censor this, this, or this, and just trying to put more foreign influence on these Japanese companies that absolutely do not want any foreign influence at all. And this is not speculation. I believe that Swift and some of those bank transaction companies fully were proven to be doing that. And that may very well be because of a overly reaching United States law, or a overly optimistic or broad interpretation of United States law. But yeah, Japan in general is getting increasingly having this issue where people, mostly powerless committees in the UN, European countries in general, keep trying to pass laws that would ban particularly the animated manga hentai content that is prevalent and fairly commonly accepted in Japan. On a side note, while I'm speaking about Japan, Reddit had an interesting article about how paying people to increase the birth rate, since the Japanese have a really low falling birth rate, seems to never work. Where Finland had done this experiment for giving $1,000 every month to somebody. I think it was every month, maybe it was only every year, to people who get pregnant for the rest of their life, and that only worked for about 12 months before people stopped getting pregnant. Which, in fairness, $1,000 even a month to get pregnant and have a child is nowhere near enough to convince people that really weren't planning on having kids in the first place. That only pushes people who were on the fence to have kids, and arguably maybe you don't want fence-sitting parents to jump into being parents just for $1,000 or any amount of money, really. Let's say it was $1 million, so you got $1 million every year if you had a child. I mean, you may still be a terrible parent. You may very well not want to put your body at risk to have a child. You may very well still not want to change your lifestyle. $1 million would change a lot more people's mind than $1,000, but yeah, in the long run, there's just way more factors that need to be considered as far as the quality of life and the diminishing of quality of life that you will have having a child in many scenarios, although in other scenarios your quality of life will go up. And yeah, that is a Japanese problem, as I see it, is that the quality of life in Japan has to be significantly increased for them to start deciding to want to have kids, and that's a harder nut to crack, certainly. Moving on to the Gematsu articles, hopefully we can go through these a little bit quicker. Cozy City Builder Town to City has been announced for PC. Seems to be a voxel based game, at least it has zoomed in art style. Yeah, that is a different art style for a city builder. It's not one I know I 100% think I would love, though. I'll leave it at that. The Hello Kitty Island Adventure Physical Deluxe Edition has been announced for Switch, which, since this is the Sanrio characters, including Hello Kitty, that's fairly kid-friendly and kid-focused, so a physical version of that makes sense. I'm not sure, though, that $60 is the right price for the game, although I'm not 100% sure what the game actually is either. Let's see. Mandragora title has been changed to Mandragora Whispers of the Witch Tree, which I think pretty much all games should be something like that, in that a single word is just too short for a title, just for unique naming sake, and let alone copyright sake. A magical gangster third-person action RPG, which that's certainly saying something, called the Directorate Novitiate. Yeah, and I'm not sure that's a word. Actually, has been announced for PC. Interesting. So it definitely has like a control feel to it. Which, yeah, I'm a little surprised. Yeah, particularly in this screenshot. I'm a little surprised that there weren't more control clones at this point, but I guess it just really takes that long to make any game, and it definitely is a case that if you rush out and make a bad game, nobody's going to play it, even if it looks somewhat like Control. They may have made a better decision to compare to Control in that this seems like this is just going to be more around magical creatures instead of SCPs and kind of horror looking creatures. Let's see, a vehicle physics-based destruction game, Instruments of Destruction, is coming to the PS5 and the Xbox Series on March 27th. Date Everything has been delayed to June, so it's not going to make it its Valentine's Day launch. Valentine's Day barely has any relevancy around video games. It should have some relevancy, but dating romance visual novels sell year-round as best as they do sell, and having a Valentine's Day sale is about as much as I could ever really see happening there. I don't think Valentine's Day is particularly too popular in Japan, and that's where the majority of visual novels are coming from anyways. The Summer Games Fest showcase is set for June 6th. Forza Horizon 5 is coming to PS5 this spring. Nintendo 64 adding Ridge Racer 64. The VTuber Amu Syrup visual novel Dreamy Syrup has been announced for PS4 and 5, Switch, PC, iOS, and Android, so they are really covering the bases here, except for the Xbox. Another great example of just how poorly the Xbox is concerned about, or see how poorly it performs from the Japanese side. The Tokyo Indie Game Summit for 2025 stage schedule has been announced. Really stepped all over that. I'm gonna just scroll down here quickly to say check out this article. Yeah. Sin Duality Echoes of Ada Season 1 update launches February 6th. Killing Floor 3 launches March 25th. It'll be interesting to see how many people play that. Withering Rooms creator announces a horror action RPG called Withering Realms for consoles and PC. Multiverse is going to end service on May 30th. Season 5 begins February 4th. Pixel Misspelled Cross Rune Factory launches February 20th. Chic Hondo Yukai Rampage is coming to the Switch on May 29th. I don't think that's the way you spell yokai. Maybe that's a different spelling of yokai. Do we have any screenshots here? I really quickly want to just see what kind of game this is. It's a shoot 'em up. Interesting. That was not really what I was expecting at all. A Capcom Spotlight plus Monster Hunter Wilds showcase set for February 4th. Scar-Led Salvation debut trailer gameplay details and screenshots are available. It's a Returnal-like third-person shooter due out May 29th in Japan. Interesting, Returnal being used as a reference. We already saw this last stream. Compile Hearts 2025 lineup trailer is available if you want to check that out. See. The games here are listed. do any of these games really spark any real interest from me now? I don't think so. Sorry for having to move faster today. Let's see. First, Edge port for modern consoles is going to be announced in mid to late February. Sugoro Quest Dice Heroes is coming to PS4 and 5, Xbox One and Series and Switch. So I'd assume this is some kind of dice-based game. Yeah. What do I wish that there was a way to automatically convert these videos. Oh man, this is an old NES game based off dice rolling. Which in fairness, most games have basically dice rolls happening in the background anyways. So you might as well make it an element of your game. But yeah, I really wish there was a way to convert a video down into a group of screenshots just automatically from YouTube. That would be really nice. One thing I can applaud Facebook for them is that they've finally gotten their video screenshots manipulation system changed to a certain point. So now no longer can there be like a single frame that is just a fake frame to a video, so that you click on it and then you end up watching something that is totally not the frame that it's paused on. Instead, now it's showing several frames in a row in a loop for videos on Facebook, which is a way most social media should probably go to prevent that kind of manipulation. And I'm not sure if they really are letting users pick where it loops or not. But it definitely was the case that videos you saw on Facebook suggested to you are going to be, the still frame is going to be the sexiest frame you see, whether that's actually sexual sexiest or just most interesting, most attractive frame, and then everything else once you hit play is going to be a very much a disappointment from that, and not really what the frame that it's paused on implied. Moving on though from that ramble, Breakarts 3 is launching this spring. Nitro Express also launches this spring. Any idea? No. Eden.schemata launches this spring, so I imagine this is all part of some presentation, I guess, of the Steam Next Game Fest. Or no, that hasn't happened yet. It's happening in February. But yeah, I'd assume this is all the same play as a mini show. So let's see. Snezzy Inca Sentinel Girls 2 is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, and Switch on February 13th. It's currently already available on PC. That is a heck of a word. Do we have a Steam link? So can we find that quickly? Yeah. So I vaguely recall this game, and apparently for what it's selling itself as, it is overwhelmingly positive. So I'll move it from my fall list to my wish list as a game I might actually buy at some point. It still does kind of feel like it would be a weird pick for me to try and play though. And yeah, overwhelmingly positive reviews should have an influence and encourage me to play different types of games and try different things. Groove Coaster future performers have been announced for Switch. Obviously this is a rhythm game, but it's a part of a series. Unlike previous entries of Groove Coaster series, it's a completely new game redesigned from the ground up. New elements have been introduced across everything. Again, yeah, really just gotta check out these trailers. One of the YouTube shorts I put up was blocked globally by the content creator, so I don't know why your own trailer on Steam, which is not actually copyrightable according to my interpretation of the law and my understanding of it. I don't know why you'd have Content ID copyright claiming that and blocking it for your trailer. But it does happen on rare occasion, and frankly, if you don't want me to make a YouTube short promoting your game or covering your game in any form, then I don't want to cover it, so we can move on from that. And then the Famitsu sales from the 20th to the 26th have been updated. I'm not sure we already covered this or not. Again, we play our weekly guessing game as far as how many PS5 games amongst the wall of Nintendo Switch games will make the top 20 or 30. Ender Magnolia for the Nintendo Switch is new, and the PS5 isn't new. And then Guilty Gear Strive is new. And yeah, for the top 30, we have 1, 2, 3 PS5 games. Rest all being Nintendo Switch. And while we're still just seeing the Nintendo Switch sell like hotcakes, although maybe the PS5 overall is selling a little bit better week to week than it was. Maybe a few hundred more units, maybe even 1,000 more units than it has been. PS4 Pro still in a low place, and Xbox is still in incredibly low numbers, but better numbers than they have been in the past. And PS4 itself is about to fall off the chart as far as the top 10 hardware things. And I imagine as soon as the Switch 2 releases, it would just fall off the chart, and that they would only name the top 10 hardware things, but maybe not. Maybe they would just add an 11. Nintendo new DS, 2DS have stopped being mentioned, so either they're selling less than 31 units per week, or sales numbers are just no longer even being collected on those hardware. That brings us to the gaming on Linux games, which, particularly since I'm in a rush today, I'm going to only just show the headlines when they're talking about games and cover only the stories of more general Linux Steam Deck updates. Minecraft getting a new type of cows, fiery bush and more ambient sounds. Firefly bush. Spell Brigade getting gameplay improvements plus UI update for the Steam Deck. The games you can claim from Prime for February list is here on Gaming on Linux. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth should now work better on Linux and Steam Deck with the latest Proton hotfix. NVIDIA's beta driver 570.86.16 has been released with variable rate refresh for multiple displays and lots of improvements, which that sounds good for people with NVIDIA graphics card, which is most gamers. I updated my NVIDIA drivers and it seemed like it kind of was a pointless thing to do. I feel like I've updated my video card drivers multiple times since I last played a video game for very little reason. nothing more than habit. And I definitely have been forced to update Windows multiple times for very little reason since I last played a video game. Open source real-time strategy 0AD Alpha 27 is going to released with a new Vulkan renderer, new maps, and AMD FSR, and lots more. Another example of games embracing Linux video drivers. A free bite-sized photography platformer called Batography is now out on Steam. That actually interests me, so I'll make an exception there. It's already free, it's very positive, so instead of putting that one on the wish list, I can just add it to my library and take it off the following list. Put your thinking cap on for Fallacy Quiz, a game that tests your reasoning skills. Well, that sounds like an interesting concept as far as logical fallacies. Although, inherently, knowing what logical fallacies are doesn't prevent you from really falling for them, nor does it help you in any way to point out those kinds of logical fallacies to people who have no idea what a logical fallacy even is while using them all the time. Yeah, you can't really logic people into being logical when they are not logical in the first place, or irrational or emotional. The End of the Sun is a Slavic fantasy time travel adventure. It's out now. Yeah. Let's see, NT Sync driver support heads to wine with a new merge request. Ready for the Linux kernel 6.14. I'd have to double check how far behind SteamOS is as far as Linux kernels though, but I'd imagine it might be fairly far behind. I haven't seen a SteamOS update that felt like it was full on replacing the operating system. In fact, I'm not sure it's actually happened at all to the point where you'd have to reinstall any rooted apps that you installed. Which, using the phrase rooted, is not really what most people would use, but it's a good analogy. Next-gen construction simulation game Roadcraft has gotten a new trailer and release date. Want to check out gamingonlinux.com for that. Let's see. Calabria has taken over libsurvive development and open source VR lighthouse tracking system. I think I'm thinking of a different company. Calabria, I thought, was the name of an online Google Docs alternative. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 from Morehouse Studios is confirmed to be playable on the Steam Deck. And the Relaxed Factory Automation Sim Learning Factory 1.0 is out now. And then the big news last stream, I think, is that the PlayStation Network requirement on PC will now be optional with in-game rewards. Yep. Which that definitely was good news. Didn't seem to make that big of a splash though. Not too many people talking about it yet. Maybe some DF Retro will get back to it next time they stream. And then that's going to bring us to GameDeveloper.com. There's a report that Ben Studio has cut contractors following live service game cancellations. Sony is partially pulling back on the account linking requirements. BioWare cutting Chef and shuffles others to different EA teams among the Mass Effect focus. Meta's Speculative Reality Labs division continues to excel at losing billions of dollars. The division lost over $17.7 billion in the last fiscal year. Fingersoft reappoints Timu Nari as CEO to deliver clear direction moving forward. This is some kind of mobile studio. I'm not sure what Fingersoft makes as far as a game goes. No. Xbox hardware sales decline as Game Pass sets quarterly revenue records. So that certainly shows why they want to make everything in Xbox, is that they want to stop selling hardware and focus on what's gaining them money, which is Game Pass overall on different devices. Apparently, Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown sold 1.3 million copies in its first year. That is an accomplishment, certainly, but it is fairly noticeable that that isn't even 2 million. It's not even a round number, like 1.5 million, and that they are only putting out this information after the first year, whereas major, huge sellers would hit 1.5 million in less than a year in many cases. The Video Game History Foundation launches its digital library for anyone who wants to study games. The countdown starts now, I guess, towards people filing copyright claims and trying to shut it down. Although it may be harder to do that depending on how they're hosting the data. That's another thing to look at and for me to research later. Forza Horizon 5 switches tracks to the PlayStation 5 in the spring. And Midnight Society, the studio co-founded by a streamer who admitted to messaging a minor, has shut down. Notice how the headline is fairly different here, in that they are putting in a lot of extra words to talk about Dr. Disrespect without actually even naming Dr. Disrespect in the first headline. The real story here is Midnight Society has shut down. And then deeper into it, you could talk around the circumstances of losing Dr. Disrespect, even though he's not being really named as the reason why Midnight Society is being shut down. On the other hand, I don't think anybody's really defending Dr. Disrespect at this point. I'd have to go back into my own streams and see if there's ever a point where I really defended him. I don't think so. I probably gave him a lot of benefit of the doubts, but yeah, that's about as much. And it's not wrong or bad to give people the benefit of the doubt. We'll wait and see before making an opinion, or not making an opinion in the first place is a great idea. But yeah, I never watched Dr. Disrespect, so I have really no interest in him. Indigo Development Conference to continue independently of the Dutch Game Garden. I have not heard of this conference before. I would have to assume happens in the Netherlands, and that would be why. Moving on, so now I'm going to rush through all the new games on Steam to see what games deserve a YouTube short or not. We'll see how that goes. Okay, we'll quickly put it on the follow list if it has a chance. And then Hire to Die, we'll give that a chance. Gonna be fairly generous, I think, today. Also, just by the factor of this one's not in English, so that has to be a no. Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of those hidden object. I commissioned some games being released lately. it may be the case that they finally saturated their ability to create more of the hidden object art, or the AI program they were potentially using to make that hidden art has run into some trouble, which I definitely don't know if that's what's happening with the iCommission series, but it is very believable that there is at least one game creator that is using AI art generators to make hidden object games, and I definitely know I've seen some games that are using AI art very obviously for like jigsaw puzzle games. Is this in English? Over the past few streams, it definitely has felt like we have seen less really awful games and perhaps a slightly improvement on slightly more good looking games, at least slightly good looking games. But the big ones, the AAA games, the system sellers, the things like that, quadruple A games, still are completely lacking. We are increasingly still seeing more and more Japanese only language games come out, which there definitely is going to be a point where after a few years of Japanese games being developed to include or to be exclusive to PC, that there will be a shift certainly in the quality of Japanese games too, where you're gonna see things like Final Fantasy be first and foremost a PC game instead of it being targeting console games. I am seeing what look like a lot of asset flip 3D games that look kind of good, but still feel like they're missing something. And perhaps seeing a little fewer horror games these days. So yeah, it does feel like a slight shift has happened. Although it may just be a small blip too. It may very well just be because we're in January for one more day. Is a great example of a probably asset flip horror game that's not really showing me anything, so that's going to be a no. One of the content creators had been making content for way fewer of the amount of time than me and had a lot more subscribers, and I think they were monetized is what they said, so way more watch time than me too, and yeah, congratulations. Certainly it's a wild situation there. I'm not 100% immune to jealousy, but yeah, if I wanted to be successful, I would play and make content and play games that I was less interested in playing and making content on. And so, yeah. to each oneself. You have to be true and not just follow the almighty algorithm to whichever direction it wants to yank you. But yeah, I definitely am in a situation where if I could get 50 more subscribers, I'd be over 1,000. And realistically, I would like to be to get 150 or more subscribers, just so that there's a bit of a buffer there. And on top of that, it's not really subscribers I need. I would need a lot more watch time, like 2 or 3 times the amount of watch time I'm getting right now to get over 4,000 watch hours. And that's only to meet the requirements of being able to run ads, which is the only thing I really suspect my channel would succeed at. I don't think I'm going to get Patreons and things like that. I gotta take this call, so I'll be right back. Okay, that was just a phone call reminding me to make sure I'm awake and all. Which, in fairness, if I did just wake up right now, there would have been a big chance I would have fallen back asleep and missed my appointment. And even now, I'm going to have to rush to get there. I need to be there a little bit early, but by being a little bit earlier, I can also be 5 minutes off. I did show up at the meetup about 5 minutes into it, so yeah, fashionably late for a meetup, for a general appointment, which is more than acceptable. There was no reason that you needed to be there at the very beginning or early on the meetup. But yeah, if anything, on those kinds of events, it benefits people to trickle in instead of everybody being in the line at the very beginning. Uh-oh. Spider-Man 2 getting mixed reviews. Unfortunately, I'm about to... I don't have time to really investigate that. Is this a PSN requirement issue, or... Nope. They're saying it's in a rough state, technically, which is, yeah, what I would suspect would be why they would be reviewing it so poorly, because I don't think Spider-Man 2 as a game, story-wise and such, are bad. Not bad enough to be mixed reviewed. Yeah. Still, if anything, I've started to see one or two more of these text-based games, and I don't want to be exclusionary, but I still very much feel like these text-based games just really shouldn't exist on Steam. They just feel too low effort and too hard to check. I could see putting extra requirements as far as I want Steam requiring every single bit of text to be submitted before fact and run through an AI generation tool or plagiarism detection tool. There is an AI generation label that I think they said was going to be recommended. I'm not sure if it is enforced in any way. And you can certainly be more generic as far as rules and say, hey, if your game screenshots look this similar and this boring, we don't want your game on our store. Although maybe Valve is more than happy to have these games on their store because maybe there is an audience, but it definitely is not me. And I'm still kind of uncertain as far as how to work with the resolutions. I lost my train of thought there. Glad I didn't do that too much today. Survivors games is what I was gonna say. Yeah, I'm uncertain as far as how to figure out whether a survivor game is good looking or whether it is just a bad survivor game. There is almost certainly a point there where like Vampire Survivors started the Survivors game trend with some success, so I would assume that is an example of a good Survivors game. And then there's only been a couple of other games that have really made it to the new and trending tabs of the Steam store. So yeah, of all the Survivors games, there's a lot of options, but I wouldn't be surprised if really there's only one or two worth playing. Anyways, that's going to be the end of our show. So as always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because that helps me with YouTube. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.